Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Americans, my constitutional conservative friends, we are being attacked right now by the Obamacare wing of the Republican Party. Openly attacked in hostile news outlets, so-called, like Politico. I see we're also being openly attacked in the Daily Caller, another website. And I'm sure all over the place behind the scenes by the Speaker of the House and some of his minions. Before I get to the nature of this attack and the contempt they hold for the American people, I dug up a Reagan speech, February 6, 1977, that I first talked about on this broadcast many years ago. And let me remind those Republicans in the House, including three-fourths of the freshmen, about what he said. This is for them. You should listen in, though. The speech to CPAC, the fourth annual CPAC, February 6, 1977, was entitled The New Republican Party. And Reagan said, in part, 3 weeks ago here in our nation's capital, I told a group of conservative scholars that we are currently in the midst of a reordering of the political realities that have shaped our time. We know today that the principles and values that lie at the heart of conservatism are shared by the majority. Despite what some in the press may say, we who are proud to call ourselves conservative are not a minority of a minority party. We are part of the great majority of Americans of both major parties and of most of the independents as well. Reagan said, I've always been puzzled by the inability of some political media types to understand exactly what is meant by adherence to political principle. All too often in the press and the television evening news, it's treated as a call for ideological purity. Whatever ideology may mean, and it seems to mean a variety of things depending upon who's using it, it always conjures up in the mind a picture of a rigid, irrational, clinging to abstract theory in the face of reality. We have to recognize that in this country, ideology is a scarce word, and for good reason. Marxism-Leninism is, to give but one example, an ideology. All the facts of the real world have been fitted to the Procrustean bed of Marx and Lenin. The facts don't happen to fit the ideology. The facts are chopped off and discarded. I consider this to be the complete opposite to principled conservatism. Reagan said if there's any political viewpoint in this world which is free from slavish adherence to abstraction, it is American conservatism. When a conservative states that the free market is the best mechanism ever devised by the mind of man to meet material needs, he's merely stating what a careful examination of the real world has told him is the truth. When a conservative says that totalitarian communism is an absolute enemy of human freedom, he's not theorizing. He's reporting the ugly reality captured so unforgettably in the writings of Alexander Solzhenitsyn. When a conservative says it is bad for the government to spend more than it takes in, he's simply showing the same common sense that tells him to come in out of the rain. When a conservative quotes Thomas Jefferson, that government that is closest to the people is best, it is because he knows that Jefferson risked his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor to make certain that what he and his fellow patriots learned from experience was not crushed by an ideology of empire. Conservatism is the antithesis of the kind of ideological fanaticism that has brought so much horror and destruction to the world. The common sense and common decency of ordinary men and women, working out their own lives in their own way. This is the heart of American conservatism. Conservative wisdom and principles are derived from willingness to learn, not just from what is going on now, but what has happened before. The principles of conservatism are sound because they are based on what men and women have discovered through experience in not just one generation or a dozen, but in all the combined experience of mankind. When we conservatives say that we know something about political affairs and that we know can be stated as principles, we are saying that the principles we hold dear are those that have been found through experience to be ultimately beneficial for individuals, families, communities, and nations, found through the often bitter testing of pain or sacrifice and sorrow. So let us lay to rest, once and for all, the myth of a small group of ideological purists trying to capture a majority. Replace it with the reality of a majority trying to assert its rights against the tyranny of powerful academics, fashionable left revolutionaries, some economic illiterates who happen to hold elective office, and the social engineers who dominate the dialogue and set the format in political and social affairs. Reagan went on, if there's any ideological fanaticism in American political life, it is to be found among the enemies of freedom on the left or right. those who would sacrifice principle to theory, those who worship only the God of political, social, and economic abstractions, ignoring the realities of everyday life. They are not conservatives. He said, I believe that political success of the principles we believe in can best be achieved in the Republican Party. I believe the Republican Party can hold and should provide the political mechanism through which the goals of the majority of Americans can be achieved. He said, I'm going to refer to these principles, at least for the purposes of the speech, as the new Republican Party. Reagan went on. The new Republican Party I envision is one that will energetically seek out the best candidates for every elective office, candidates who not only agree with, but understand and are willing to fight for a sound, honest economy for the interest of American families and neighborhoods and communities, and a strong national defense. He said, and these candidates must be able to communicate those principles to the American people in language they understand. Inflation isn't a textbook problem. Unemployment isn't a textbook problem. They should be discussed in human terms. Our candidates must be willing to communicate with every level of society because the principles we espouse are universal and cut across traditional lines. In every congressional district, should be a search made for young men and women who share these principles, and they should be brought into positions of leadership in the local Republican Party groups. We can find attractive, articulate candidates if we look, and when we find them, we will begin to change the sorry state of affairs that has led to a Democratic-controlled Congress for more than 40 years. Reagan said, I need not remind you that you can have the soundest principles in the world. But if you don't have the candidates who can communicate those principles, candidates who are articulate as well as principled, you are going to lose election after election. I refuse to believe that the good Lord divided this world into Republicans who defend basic values and Democrats who win elections. We have to find tough, bright, young men and women who are sick and tired of cliches and the pomposity and the mind-numbing economic idiocy of the liberals in Washington. This is Ronald Reagan. 1977, challenging the Republican establishment after he had just lost a few months earlier the Republican primary battle to Gerald Ford. Reagan said, it is at this point, however, that we come across a question that is really the essential one. What will be the basis of this new Republican Party? To what set of values and principles can our candidates appeal? Where can Americans who want to know where we stand look for guidance? I'm not reading the whole speech. I'm reading sections of it. He said, well, we, the members of the new Republican Party, we believe that the preservation and enhancement of the values that strengthen and protect individual freedom, family life, communities and neighborhoods, and the liberty of our beloved nation should be at the heart of any legislative or political program presented to the American people. And toward that end, we therefore commit ourselves to certain propositions and offer them to each American, believing that the new Republican Party, based on these principles, will serve the interest of all the American people. And part of that list, he said, we believe that liberty can be measured by how much freedom Americans have to make their own decisions, even their own mistakes. Government must step in when one's liberties impinge on one's neighbors. Government must protect constitutional rights, deal with other governments, protect citizens from aggressors, assure equal opportunity, and be compassionate and caring for those who are unable to care for themselves. But our federal system of local, state, national government is designed to sort out on what level these actions should be taken. Those concerns of a national character, such as air and water pollution that do not respect boundaries, or the national transportation system, or efforts to safeguard your civil liberties, must, of course, be handled at the national level. As a general rule, however, we believe that government action should be taken first by the government that resides as close to you as possible. And he emphasized families must continue to be the foundation of our nation. Families, not government programs, are the best way to make sure our children are properly nurtured, our elderly are cared for, our cultural and spiritual heritages are perpetuated, our laws are observed, and our values are preserved. Gee, I wonder if any of the popular YouTube governors are listening. Thus, it is imperative that our government programs, actions, officials, and social welfare institutions never be allowed to jeopardize the family. We fear the government may be powerful enough to destroy our families. We know that it is not powerful enough to replace them. The new Republican Party must be committed to working always in the interest of the American family. He went on. Reagan said, every dollar spent by the government is a dollar earned by individuals. Government must always ask, are your dollars being wisely spent? Can we afford it? Is it not better for the country to leave your dollars in your pocket? He said, we warned of things to come, of the danger inherent in unwarranted government involvement in things not its proper province. What we warned against has come to pass. Today, more than two-thirds of our citizens are telling us and each other that social engineering by the federal government has failed. That great society is great only in power, in size, and in cost. And so are the problems it set out to solve. Freedom has been diminished. We stand on the brink of economic ruin. Our task now, Reagan said, is not to sell a philosophy, but to make the majority of Americans who already share that philosophy see that modern conservatism offers them a political home. We are not a cult. We are members of a majority. Let's act and talk like it. The job is ours, and the job must be done. If not by us, who? If not now, when? Ronald Reagan, February 6, 1977 to CPAC. A man I campaigned for in 76 and 80 and served under him for 8 years, and then I have to hear these putative Republican leaders in the House calling us, who believe in every word that Reagan espoused there, extremists and radicals and right-wingers. We, the mainstream of America, we, the majority of America, who are concerned, as Reagan was, about what's happening to this country, and that the timidity, and it's not just timidity, the cynical statements and votes that are being cast in the Republican-controlled House to try and convince us that they're making progress, that somehow we should applaud them and thank them and encourage them. Look, folks, this country is at a dire position. There's absolutely no question about it. The Democrat Party is run by leftist radicals. They would just as soon take this nation over the edge in order to rebuild it than not. It is a dangerous crowd. There's no question about it. That's why we gave the majority position for the Republicans in the House of Representatives. That's why we sent 36 fresh conservatives to the House of Representatives to try and change things, to take on the case. Not one of them sounds like Ronald Reagan. I'm not saying they have to be Ronald Reagan, but how about embracing the principles? How about being competent? How about being articulate? This isn't about a Republican team in the House. This is what we hear now, as you'll find out after the break. We have to stick together. We're a team. No. Your job is to stick with us, the citizens of this country. We're not your subjects. We're your rulers. You're not our rulers. We have given you a perfect opportunity to contrast our positions, which are common sense, constitutional, fiscally responsible positions that will save this nation, that will save future generations, with an excessive, out-of-control, rogue ideology. And you fail to do it. You won't communicate with the American people. You do not have confidence in the American people. You do not have confidence in conservative principles. And I will prove that as soon as we come back.